Hello, and welcome to this rules explanation for Kurt Vonnegut's GHQ. My name is Jeff Engelstein, and I'm the developer of the game, and I'm happy to walk you through the rules and explain to you how it is played. GHQ is a game for two players. One person takes the blue pieces, and the other takes the red. I've laid out the seven different types of pieces here in front of us. In the middle, you will see the star. That is the headquarters. That's the weakest piece on the board, but it's also the most important. If you capture the enemy's headquarters, you win the game. On the top row, each side has three different types of infantry, and on the bottom, there's three different types of artillery. You can tell the difference because the infantry has the white triangles on top of the pieces, and the artillery has the white rectangles on the pieces. There's three different types of each. You've got regular infantry, mechanized infantry, and paratroopers for the infantry. You'll notice the mechanized infantry have these two circles. Bring that up a little closer here. So those two circles show that the piece moves two spaces. Other pieces all just move one. The paratroopers have this special little paratrooper symbol on there, or airborne symbol, and that they can move a little bit differently. We'll talk about that in a second. The artillery, there's three different types of artillery: regular artillery, motorized artillery, which once again has those two black circles on them, showing that they move two spaces, and heavy artillery. Artillery also have these little asterisks. That shows how far the piece can bombard. These two types of artillery can go two spaces for bombardment, but this heavy artillery has three little stars, and that means that they can bombard three spaces. So now that you understand about the pieces, let's go through, set up the game, and I'll show you how it's played. Okay, so here we have the starting positions for all the pieces. You can see that you actually only start with 5 pieces on the board for each side: 3 infantry, a regular artillery, and your headquarters. All the other pieces start off to the side in reserve. They can come in as reinforcements at any point during the game. This setup is actually really easy because you can see the pieces are printed here on the board. So you just match the shapes and you're ready to go. So startup is super fast. So on your turn, you get 3 actions. And there's 3 different actions that you can take with each of them. You can do them in any order that you want to do them. The only rule with the actions is that you cannot do 2 or more actions on a single piece. So one of the actions is move. So if you move a piece, you can't use a second action to move the same piece again. You can take move again, but you have to move a different piece. So the 3 actions are move, reinforce, and rotate an artillery. The third one you do very rarely, so we're going to come back to that one a little bit later. The 2 main ones are move and reinforce. So let's talk first about move. So movement is quite simple. Every piece, except for the ones with the 2 black circles on them, can move 1 space in any direction, including diagonally. So this piece can move to any of these spaces. Same thing with this heavy artillery. Same thing, if it's there, I can move it there or whatever. You are not allowed to move a space where there is another unit, friendly or enemy. You can only move to an empty space. Okay. The units that can move 2 spaces, say I've got this unit out here, they can move 1 space if they want, but if they move 2 spaces, it has to be in the same direction. So if I want to move 2 spaces, I could go to this space, or I could move 2 spaces diagonally and end up here. But both spaces need to be empty. If I have this piece here, I cannot move this motorized infantry all the way to here because they'd be jumping over this piece. The only other special type of move is with paratroopers. So paratroopers can move normally 1 space in any direction, just like any other piece. However, if they are on your back row, as their move action, they could jump to any empty space on the board. And that's going to be very powerful and allow you to break through enemy formations. But if they jump really far into the back of the enemy row, they're going to be very vulnerable, and they're so powerful you kind of want to make sure they're not captured unless it's really important what you're doing. So they can move normally, or they can jump if they are in one of the spaces on your back row. If they jump and then you move them back to the back row again, you can jump again. So as long as you can get back to the back row, you can continue to jump as many times as you want. So those are the basic rules for movement. The second action that you can do is reinforcement. So, as we discussed, you start with only 5 pieces on the board. So as one of your 3 actions each turn, or 2 or 3, but as an action, you can bring one of the units that are in your reinforcement area and put it on any empty space in your back row. So as an action, I could put this piece here, or I could put this piece here. I could do both of those things. That's 2 actions. The one thing to remember about reinforcements is that when you bring them on, that counts as an action for that piece. So you cannot bring a piece on and move it on the same turn. Okay. The last thing that you can do is you can change the rotation, the direction that an artillery piece is pointing. Infantry pieces, the ones with the triangle, it doesn't matter what direction that they're facing. They can freely change their facing and face whatever they want to do, and we'll talk a little bit about that when they're capturing. Artillery, it doesn't matter which direction they're facing because those are the spaces that they are bombarding. So whenever you move an artillery unit, one space in this case, when you're done moving, you can freely rotate it into any direction that you want. So that third action that you can do is if you want to change the direction artillery is facing, but you don't want to move it, that's another type of action that you can do called a rotation. So it's just like you're moving it, but you're moving 0 spaces. So in this case, as an action, you could turn it to do that. One thing I did not mention is it's very rare that you'd want to do this, but you don't have to take all 3 of your actions if you don't want to. You can do 0, 1, or 2 if you choose. Okay, so that's moving, reinforcing, and rotating. So the next and final part that we'll talk about is how to capture. Now let's talk about how pieces can capture other pieces. As we mentioned during movement, unlike, say, chess, you don't capture a piece by moving onto the same space as it. In fact, you're not allowed to. It's also not like checkers where you jump over a piece. So in this case, infantry and artillery capture in 2 different ways. So first I'm going to talk about infantry and the way that they capture. Also, the thing about infantry is that they capture other infantry and artillery differently. So actually, first I'm going to talk about infantry against other infantry, and then we'll talk about infantry against artillery. So this is a situation maybe a few turns into a game. So infantry can capture other infantry by being next to them, but not diagonally. Again, infantry can move diagonally, but they only attack from the 4 orthogonal sides, front, back, left, and right. If this piece is here, this person is not attacking this person. So I have to move to here if I want to attack. Now, if 2 infantry pieces are facing against each other, either here or if it was here, it would be the same thing. They're called engaged. And if it's just 1 against 1, it's a standoff. Nothing happens. So in this case, if I went from here, let's say I'm here, I move here. Now these 2 pieces are engaged. They don't capture each other. It does impact movement a little bit, which I'll talk about in a second, but they don't capture each other. But if I can get 2 infantry attacking this 1 infantry, then I would capture them. So let's say, for example, for my second action, let's say this is my first action. My second action, I can move this infantry. Remember, even though it's got the triangle, so it's infantry over here. And now I've got 2 pieces next to this 1 piece, and this piece is captured. And it comes off the board. Pieces that are captured and come off the board do not come back as reinforcements. They're out of the game permanently. Okay. So that's how you capture a piece. You just have to have more pieces next to it than basically 2 pieces next to the single piece. However, let's say the situation was like this, okay? And that piece was there, 1 space over. Now, if I move this motorized infantry, 1, 2 to go here, now this piece is attacking here, but this piece, because it's next to this, it has to be engaged with this piece, okay? In other words, any pieces that are kind of on their own need to be engaged, to people that they're next to if they can. So you can only capture if you have an excess number of pieces. So now let's say it's blue's turn. Blue can move 2 spaces here. And now this piece is engaged against this piece. And you've got 2 pieces now engaged against this piece. So this piece would be captured. Now, The other thing you'll notice here is that now, after I take this piece off, I've now got these two pieces against this piece. Now, normally in that situation, this piece would be captured. However, there is a rule in GHQ that a single action can only result in one capture. So if this piece moves here, you can only capture this person. Okay. Now, if you can move another piece next to this, then you would capture it because that's an action. But if the situation is like this at the beginning of the very next turn for blue, then this would be captured, but you do have a turn to move this out of the way. Similarly, if you have a situation, say, like this, okay, if this piece moves forward to here, you have a choice of which of these pieces that you capture, but then you can't immediately capture this second piece. You can only capture one. The other rule about infantry engaging each other, which is very important, is that they limit you're limited a little bit in your movement. If I am engaged with another infantry unit, I am not allowed to move directly to another space where I would also be engaged. So this piece is not allowed to move to here. You can't go from here to here because here I'm engaged and here I would be engaged. You have to move, if I want to move this piece, I have to move it out of engagement. So I can move it here or here because, again, you don't attack diagonally, or I can move it to one of these spaces back here. Now, if this piece was here, say this piece is here, now I can no longer move from here to here because I'd still be engaged. I'm engaged with a different unit, but I'm still engaged, so I'm not allowed to make that move. So that's the way that infantry capture each other. Now let's take a look at how infantry can capture artillery. Artillery is a lot weaker than infantry in terms of being captured by them. So the rules are a little bit different. Basically, you don't have to outnumber artillery to catch them. A single infantry unit that's not engaged is enough to capture an artillery. So for example, if the situation was like this, if I move this piece here, I don't capture this infantry unit because it's equal. They are engaged with each other. You can rotate them if that helps you kind of visualize it more. You don't have to, but you can. And you can see that they're equal. However, if this is an artillery unit, okay, if I move to here and I'm adjacent, I will immediately capture that artillery unit. All it takes is one infantry next to an artillery, and then I capture it. The only exception to that with an artillery is you cannot move into spaces or attack from spaces that are directly in front of the artillery. So if I move here, I don't capture it. In fact, I'm not even allowed to move here. Artillery bombard these two spaces, and you're not allowed to move into a space that's under bombardment. So this is protected by people attacking here. So one of the tactics that you're going to see when you start playing is you sometimes want to make sure you've got infantry kind of next to your artillery to help protect it. So if it's like this, if I move this piece here, I can't capture this because this infantry unit has to engage with this infantry unit instead. So that's the way that infantry capture artillery. One other thing to point out is artillery, which we'll talk about in a second, can actually aim diagonally and bombard diagonally. So this piece here is attacking these two spaces. Now, in this case, I can attack, since infantry attack not diagonally, I now have 4 different ways that I can attack this artillery instead of just 3 from the sides. Next, we're going to talk about artillery and how they work. Now, artillery are a little bit different than infantry. They can capture pieces, but they do not capture immediately when they are moved. They have a delayed effect. So the way an artillery works is artillery, after they move, let's say this moves a space, you can rotate them freely to face any direction that you want. But let's say I decide to keep it like this as part of that move. Now, this is a 2-star artillery. So it's bombarding the next 2 spaces in front of it. This space and this space are both being attacked by this artillery. So now this infantry is being threatened to be captured by the artillery. But this infantry has a turn to get out because the artillery doesn't capture until the beginning of your next turn. So if you're playing red, if one of your actions you move this here, then blue on their turn, can take an action to move this unit away if they want to, or potentially capture the artillery So you do have a little bit of a delay, and so this can be very important for forcing the enemy to reposition their forces in a way that they don't want to be. Also, if there are two pieces here, the artillery is threatening to capture both of them. So if I move this artillery from here to here, now both of these pieces are being attacked by the artillery. If neither of them move out of the way, or if this artillery is not captured, then they will both be eliminated at the beginning of Red's next turn. Um, the other thing, as I mentioned about artillery, is that no units, artillery or infantry, are allowed to move into any spaces under bombardment. So if in situations like this piece cannot move here, and it even can't move two spaces. It can't go through here into here. The last thing you need to know is how to win the game. As mentioned, you are trying to capture the opponent's headquarters, which starts all the way back in the corner. So headquarters are captured the same way that infantry are captured. So if I move this infantry from here to here, I don't yet capture this headquarters, but it is considered engaged, and it follows the same rules about movement as infantry that are engaged. But if I can attack it with a second infantry, let's say I paradrop this person from here to here, which I can do because I'm the back row. Now I've got two attacking the headquarters, and I will win the game. And that's it. That's everything that you need to know to play GHQ. There are a few more subtle details, but there's a lot of examples in the rules, which you can check out if there's any situations arise that you're confused about. But basically, the key things are that all the pieces can move diagonally in addition to orthogonally, but they can only capture this way. They can't capture diagonally. The other thing to remember is that a single infantry move can only cause one capture. A single infantry move can never capture multiple units. Artillery bombardments don't capture pieces until the start of your next turn. And also, you can never move into or through spaces that are under artillery bombardment. And with that, you should be able to go and enjoy all of the interesting and subtle tactics and interesting strategies that you will discover as you play GHQ. Thanks for your attention, and I hope that you enjoy the game.